Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to another episode on Beyond the Touchline. Thank you very much for being patient with me. I know it's been some time since my previous upload, but I am back. And for this one, it's going to be a two-part video. We're going to look at the game weeks from 13 to 16. How it's going to work is that I'm just going to list out my predictions for the game weeks, and then obviously we'll show the results as well. And we'll talk about each team essentially from 20th all the way to 1st. This was when after game week 12 ended, so we'll just go in that order and see from there, after 3 to 4 game weeks, have they changed, the position in the table, how have they performed. And this includes looking at their performances in Europe for those teams who have played in Europe, and Champions League, Europa League, Conference League, for example, and also looking at the EFL Cup as well. But yeah, so we're going to dive straight into it, and I'll also give a rating essentially for how each of the clubs have performed over the past 3 to 4 game weeks. So of course, I've not watched every single game, evidently, and maybe some of my facts or some of my opinions may not necessarily align to what may have happened because I've not watched all the games. Sometimes what happens in the games, they're very complicated. So, but yeah, essentially we're just gonna try to run through these as fast as possible, but as I said, I'll split this into two parts. First will be the bottom half of the table, so from 11th all the way to 20th, and the next video will be from essentially the top 10. So yeah, with that being said, let's dive right in. Right, so this is obviously the new Premier League table, or rather the updated Premier League table after 16 game weeks, except Liverpool and Everton, who have not managed to play their game because of the storm that happened. But essentially, as you can tell, a lot of things have happened over the past couple of weeks. Some teams have stayed in their positions, Liverpool and Southampton namely, but otherwise you can see the midfield gap is still arguably very tight. In terms of form, I think it's been quite inconsistent across every single club, except Chelsea really have won 5 in a row. I think that's impeccable from them. They've been really up there this season, and if they're going to continue this trend, they're going to probably challenge for the title, believe it or not. Obviously Liverpool with 2 draws in their last 5 games, a little bit of a concern, but as of now, I still think they do stand a great chance of still winning the league. Obviously, Man City, we'll talk about them in the second part of this video. There's a lot to talk about them, I guess. But if you look at the bottom half of the table, obviously Wolves, 4 defeats in 5. This is me, obviously, I'm recording this past a lot of things already. This is past the EFL Cup on the Thursday. So I've not had, Wednesday night, Thursday morning. I've not, essentially the game between Man United and Arsenal, that one I've not been able to know the result, essentially. Sorry, Tottenham and Man United, I've not been able to know the result for that one. I've recording before the game has even happened for that one. But yeah, I've also known the news of Gary O'Neill getting sacked, Russell Martin as well getting the sack. No news on new manager coming in yet for the both of them, if I remember correctly. At least I don't remember seeing news on that. Yeah, so these are the news I've been receiving thus far, or I've received rather. But yeah, obviously, as I said, the clubs are in up and down form. But Palace, you can see over there, unbeaten in the last 5 games, so they've had a little bit of trajectory. But yes, this is how the table has been looking like. Now let's dive right into the bottom half after game week 12. The teams who finish in the bottom half after game week 12. Well, of course, before that, we're going to have a look at these statistics. Obviously, Haaland has not really been scoring goals, but Salah has been scoring goals, so now they're both tied on 13. Cole Palmer with 11 and Wemmer with 10. Tied with Chris Wood, who's done pretty well really for Nottingham Forest this season, of course. And if you look at the assists, Saka with 10, Salah with 9, so 22 goal contributions already from Mohamed Salah, which is obviously very incredible from him. He's really, I think, at the form again. Diallo with 6, Robinson with 6, and Cole Palmer with 6 as well. There are a couple of others with 6, but obviously, as I said, because the list only allows for 5 in this case, so I didn't really include the rest who have also gotten 6 assists to their name. Right, let's start things off with Southampton. They were 20th at the end of game week 12 and at the end of game week 16, and past the EFL game, obviously that doesn't affect the table, they are still in 20th. So they've only managed to gain 1 point essentially from their past 4 Premier League games. And that point came, I think, in the shock result rather against Brighton. In terms of my predictions, I've had 2 results correct. Sorry, the guessing on the result of the game correct, not the exact result, but the manner of which how the game went. Obviously, Chelsea, I expecting them to smash Southampton. I mean, 4-1 was quite close, I guess. 5-1 in real life. As for Tottenham, I expected 3-1 and they came up with a 5-0 result. So it just shows again how poor Southampton have been throughout the entirety of the season so far. They're clearly just not going to cut it really. which is obviously why Arsenal might have had a sack as well. But ultimately, I think the team in itself, I just don't see them really challenging out of the relegation spots. Unless something drastic happens, it's very difficult for Southampton to continue, or rather even kickstart a really good trend, or even have good form. With regards to Liverpool, the game against Liverpool, obviously 2-1. You can argue it's quite close scoreline wise. But again, yeah, it's just evidently not good. It just lacked that final quality really to even challenge the opponent for the opposing team. So it's terrible. And in terms of the rating, I think it's quite straightforward here. I've given it an E. I'm giving it this A to F. But E it is for Southampton. I mean, this is clearly not the Southampton that we know. I know just going back for the Championship, but Southampton a couple of years ago, they were doing really well. And when they let go a lot of their very good players, obviously, namely Sadio Mane, Dusan Tadic, James Ward-Prowse even, and now, Southampton, I think they're middle of nowhere really, and they're good. They're a really good Championship team for sure, but in terms of the Premier League, they're clearly just not there. Right, moving on to Palace, as I said, unbeaten in 5 games, which is really, really good from them. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to guess any of the results correct, but things have done well. First of all, I think the draw against Newcastle was really, really good. I think they're really unlucky to even get the draw. I remember that game, Newcastle had like 0.0 something worth of XG. They had one shot the entire game, and because Crystal Palace scored an own goal, and Newcastle won a lot for the majority of the game. It was thanks to a last minute equalizer that helped Palace to get back on level terms. So they deserve to have won that game, which is a bit gutting, I guess, from their opinion. But beating Ipswich was great. Drawing Man City, a Man City that is really just down in form. Really, really good result in my opinion as well. And obviously for Brighton to win 3-1. I watched that game actually, and they were playing extremely, extremely well, Palace. They were clinical. The defensive shape was really, really good. Even when Brighton was pressing in the second half, they managed to, I'd say, keep everything together and still, really try to fight for the game. So really, really good. Unfortunately, obviously the 3-2 defeat to Arsenal this morning. Again, ultimately, I think, Arsenal is obviously better than Palace. If they do manage to get that shock result, it would be obviously incredible. But I think we look a bit, retrospectively and understand that it's very, very difficult, I think, for Palace to go into that game and try to expect a result. Will I see them getting a result this weekend because they're going to play Arsenal again? You guys will find that out in the Game Week 17 pre-Game Week show for that one. But, otherwise, I think it's been a fantastic couple of games here for Palace. They've not lost a single game in the past 4 game weeks. In this case, obviously 5 games in real life, and obviously Arsenal. This one is going to be very challenging for them, but really, really good. I mean, they climbed from 19th all the way to 15th. They've doubled their points tally since, and I think it's quite self-explanatory. It's got to be an A. I think we are seeing a Palace, at least as of now, a Palace that is fighting for games, fighting for points, fighting for wins, which is fantastic. They just need to continue like this, and I think the Palace that we saw at the end of last season, as I keep reiterating about that one, I think it's going to come back. Right, moving on to Ipswich. This one I think has been also rather challenging for Ipswich. I mean, the games that they've had, I'd argue that they probably would have stood a chance of getting a decent result one way or another. To only get 3 points from the last 4 games is a bit undermining in my opinion. I think it hasn't been the best, but again, considering how it has been, I think it's not too bad. The Nottingham game, Nottingham have been on really good form this season. The trajectory has been excellent, so that would have been a really tough one. To keep the scoreline only by a goal to nil, I think is really, really good. With Crystal Palace, Palace have been pretty good as well, so that would have been a really tight game one way or another. Bournemouth, I think, unfortunate for them to lose to a 95th minute winner from Bournemouth, but they've also got themselves a 90+ minute winner against Wolves. So, one way or another, it's been quite hectic there for Ipswich, but point is, they're still 18th in the table. They've only gained 3 points because other teams around them have gained, I think, a rather substantial amount of points compared to them, or arguably, things have been yo-yoing in that area in the relegation zone. So, but do I think it's still a pretty good performance from Ipswich? 100% yes. I think it's been still pretty decent from them. I think there is still hope for them when it comes to staying in the Premier League for next year. They just need to keep trying, essentially. I think they're not really doing anything wrong. It's just that I think they're just not able to get that final click, for everything, and just get that final touch in, make everything click together for one game. for the next few games or many games, and I'm sure they'll be fine moving forward. But yeah, in my opinion, in terms of rating, considering the club and the results they've been having, yes, 3 defeats in the last 4, correct. But I think it's a close results and not like staggering results like 5-0 or they're losing substantially. So B, I think it's going to be a low B. I don't think it's a high B. I think if you want to be a little bit more critical, it could be a C. But I think for a team like Ipswich, for how they're performing when you expect them to be relegation threatened, I think it's still not too bad at this point. So yeah, I think for me it's a B for Ipswich. Right, moving on to Wolves. Now they were 17th. Now they're 19th. Obviously sacked Gary O'Neill and they've not changed their points tally. So 4 defeats in a row. And this is my first time actually predicting a match exactly correct the result that I expected it to go, which is game week 15, West Ham against Wolves, 2-1. I predicted West Ham to win in that fashion. But you can see the way I predicted Wolves. I expected them to win 3 games out of 4. And the rationale was because they won 2 games on the bounce prior to game week 13. And I was just thinking that they were able to sort of carry momentum forward. I saw positives from this club. No, unfortunately, it went completely the other way. They've conceded a total of 12 goals in the last 4 games. It's an average of 3 each game. That's horrible. That's terrible from Wolves. I mean, this is a very, very bad run of form again. To lose 4-2 to Bournemouth and then to get a smashing 4-0 defeat to Everton, especially when Everton have not been good attacking. And, Wolves conceding 2 own goals in that game as well, which sort of make the scoreline a little bit more exaggerated than it should have been. Yes, many factors, but ultimately, they've just not been good. And, Ipswich arguably would have been the best chance to even get a result. Ipswich took the result despite getting a last-minute winner. But what I'm trying to say is that I think in these past 4 games, Wolves stood a chance of getting pretty good results. I think maybe, for me, predict them to get 3 wins out of 4 was a little bit too optimistic. But I wouldn't have expected them to not even get a single point in the last 4 game weeks. That's 12 points gone right now, and they really need to pick themselves up. They need to find ways to solve this problem that they have. I don't know how they're going to move forward. I don't know what new manager is going to come in, but this is a sign of really big problems now at Wolves. They're in trouble essentially. Unless something drastic happens. Just don't see Wolves, getting out of this relegation zone, that's really the story of the season so far. It's been unlucky and terrible from the start of the season till now. I just think it might continue, which is obviously really saddening because they had a really good season last year. And I think, the sacking of Gary O'Neill is also quite sad because I think O'Neill has done a really, really good job at Wolves. They've lost many of the good players, but at this juncture, when this has happened, it is what it is ultimately. So, yeah, I mean, rating-wise, I think it's quite straightforward. It's an E for me. It's not an F, because I just don't think it's an F. It's just that they've just been bad, and this is like you can argue it's expected of them to be bad. So I don't think it's an F. It's not like they've just had this massive downturn in form. This form has been there for the entirety of the season. But it's just that so happened that from the past 4 game weeks, with defeat after defeat after defeat after defeat. But yeah, E for me. We'll see what happens moving forward with Wolves, but as of now, it's not looking too rosy. Right, Leicester City, obviously Steve Cooper getting the sack, and obviously Ruud van Nistelrooy coming in after he's left Manchester United from his interim duties. How has he fared? Now, obviously, he didn't take charge for game week 13 when they got smacked 4-1 there. But the win against West Ham, despite West Ham having that many shots against them, they still managed to pick up a win. Clinical. The result against Brighton, really, really good. But then the 4-0 defeat to Newcastle, I think that's all brought them back to reality. But has Ruud been doing a decent job thus far? I think you could argue, yes. The 4-0 defeat, I don't really know what to say about that one. That could probably suggest it's still where they are in terms of like the quality. But otherwise, I think, from the games against West Ham and Brighton, I think it's good, to get a draw against Brighton is still rather decent. I mean, you have to consider how good Brighton have been this season, despite, yes, they're late, wobbly form, but ultimately, you've got to understand where the club is at the moment. Leicester City, it's not looking too great for them either, and I think to pick up certain good results, yes, I think that's positive, but they've still got a lot of work to do. They've still got to dig deep. They're really still in this relegation fight. They were 16th, they dropped to 17th despite gaining 4 points. So it again goes to show, like, you know, in that bottom few spots, you've really got to make the most of the results every single time. I don't think there's much to say about Leicester. I think we've still got to observe how Rudy's going to take the club over the next couple of game weeks. As I said, it's been pretty okay so far. I don't think it's been diabolical. It's just that it's going to be challenging, of course, for Rude. But we'll see what he can do with the team. I think, you know, they can be cautiously optimistic moving forward how this team is going to perform. But I think in terms of rating, it might be a bit harsh to give them a D. But considering the fact that I just feel that Leicester probably can be doing better, and considering the fact that they have won the league last year, I think there's more. There's more from this club, in my opinion. There's 100% more. I think Root needs to get some things right, tweak things left, right, and centre in this club, and maybe, just maybe, we'll start to see some results flowing in. But as of now, I think it's a D. It's not looking too great, but it's not looking too bad either. But it's just not a C to me, because they arguably could have lost the game against Brighton. And West Ham, as I said, you know, they were that clinical. So I just really hard. I guess it's just hard for me to exactly pinpoint where they stand right now. But yeah, I mean, I could be harsh with this rating now looking at it again, but I'm just going to stick to it and still give them a D. Right, looking at Everton. Now, this one is, I think it's a bit tricky. First of all, losing 4-0 to Man United, absolutely god-awful. But to win Wolves 4 goals to the good, that's incredible. And obviously the game is Liverpool, we don't really know, the game's been postponed. But in Emirates Stadium, to get a point out of that, I think is a great result in my opinion. And they've gotten 4 points, but they still dropped a position. But what do I make out of these results? I think it's obviously not been the easiest. I mean, imagine having Manchester United, Liverpool, and Arsenal, 3 of them in 4 games. It's obviously very demanding out of them. And to get the win against Wolves, to capitalise on that, and to get a draw against Arsenal, getting 4 points out of a possible 9, is not the end of the world for Everton, really. I think the win against Wolves has probably saved them from me giving a really bad rating. But considering, again, how inconsistent they've been, they've always, arguably, in my opinion, been relying on Pickford to save them half the time. I don't think it's a bad result, in my opinion. They've got to be happy about it. In general, how it's been for them. I know they're always fighting, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I've given them a C. Again, obviously, I think you've got to consider the Everton that we've been seeing are just not good. And one can argue, like, I've given Leicester a D, and given Everton a C, which is very different. So I think my expectation on Leicester is probably slightly higher than Everton, because I think Leicester, they have something in their locker to arguably get results when they can. I think Everton is, they have the team, but they've been showing, to me at least, have not been able to perform. And it's been like this for the past 2-3 seasons. They've always been fighting on the fringes of relegation. It's only towards the end of the season where they're able to secure another year in the Premier League. But it's not the Everton when Lukaku was still in there, when Naismith, for example, was still in there, when Phil Jagielka, Tim Howard was still there. It's not this Everton anymore. And we've got to understand this Everton is unfortunately very, very, very weak. So to get this number of points, I think is considerably good. And considering the opponent, I think, again, the judgment of the rating is because of these few games have happened. I think it's okay. I think had they lost that game to Liverpool, and I think it would depend. It would have depended on how bad the result it would have been. If they've lost by a substantial amount, yes, it probably would have gone down to a D. But if it was a 1-0 defeat, maybe I could have still kept the C. So it will be very interesting how they're going to play against Liverpool. Whether or not they're going to have an uptick in form prior to the game, I'm not too sure. Whether or not Liverpool going to have a downturn in form prior to the game, I'm not too sure as well. So we'll see what happens with that game. But yes, Everton, a C. Now, West Ham, obviously another club that I support, my second team in the Premier League. Well, I mean, I've predicted exactly for them 2 results out of the 4, so I think that's really, really good. But if I look at the results, I think they should have gotten more. I think it's not been good from Lopetegui, in my opinion. I still believe, like, he shouldn't stay there for long. What I'm seeing this season from West Ham is just not good enough, in my opinion, compared to when Moyes was in charge. I mean, to lose 5-2 to Arsenal, and I think they concede those 5 goals all in the first half. That's like a capitulation from West Ham. That was god awful. And as I said, 30 plus shots against Leicester and not being able to get a result out of that, that is still terrible. But to get the result over the line against Wolves, fantastic. Now Bournemouth, obviously the free kick from Arizona now was fantastic. It's really unsavable. But again, Bournemouth have been really, really good. I mean, they're 6th at the table right now. So yeah, again, looking at that, it's going to be challenging anyways for West Ham to come in and get a result out of that, in terms of win. I think a draw is still a rather respectable result in that manner. But yeah, they stay in 14th, 15 to 19 points. They've gotten 4 points out of a possible 12, which honestly on paper to me isn't good. But considering the stature of the team at this point in time and considering the form, it's okay. I think it's arguably still respectable, I guess, to a certain extent, but it can't go on like this forever. They've got to dig deep, as I said. Lopetegui's got to find ways to really get this team back to how it was when they were really, really good at some point in the past couple of years. Yes, I know they've had their own relegation threatened seasons, but after that, when they were challenging in Europe or challenging for Europe as well, I saw positive West Ham, and now it's back to square again. So challenging, difficult. We'll see what happens with West Ham, but I think considering they've got a certain number of results over the line, it's a C for me. Again, considering how I think poor they've been this season, it's again to me a decent or reasonable grade to give to West Ham. Now with Bournemouth, I think it's quite self-explanatory. 4 games, 10 points. What more can you ask? It's near perfect for them, essentially. I can just give it a rating right now. It's an A for me, 100%. There's no questions asked about that. To beat Tottenham, to get that 1-0 famous win against Tottenham, they've been that good. They've beaten City, they've beaten Tottenham. It's incredible. It's been a fantastic season from Bournemouth. And to climb from 13th all the way to 6th in 4 game weeks as well. As those to continue this, they really could be challenging for a top half or even European football. The teams this year, I mean, it's been up and down, obviously. Some teams have done reasonably bad, some teams have done reasonably good or shockingly good. And Bournemouth, in this case, they fall into the shockingly or reasonably good category. It's been great from them. I don't know what to say. Things have been gelling in that team. They've been getting the results over the line. Of course, then you could argue they could have gotten a result against West Ham. But again, flip it around and look at it that maybe they should have gotten a result against Tottenham. But they fought for it. They deserved that result, one way or another. It's been great for Bournemouth. I don't know what to say about this club. I think positives everywhere. I'm sure the spirit is really high at this club right now. They need to continue this. It's just like Nottingham, essentially. And Nottingham, they've been able to continue that result. And we'll look into them when we go into the second part of this 2-part video. But great for Bournemouth. Fantastic. Nothing more to say except I am impressed. And I hope we continue like this. It's great to see when teams like that, they have, even if it's a 1-season standout. I love to see it, Durham, Brighton, Nottingham. I love to see these teams, really progressing forward, moving up the Premier League ranks. And they can provide strong results, and that's what we love about football, isn't it? Like, these teams really challenging when we don't expect them to challenge, considering how they've done, etc., etc. But it's fantastic from Bournemouth. Nothing more to say. We can move on to the next team. Next up, Manchester United. Now, I think it's quite funny, really, when you've seen them losing a position, but they've gotten 6 points. What does this suggest? They've not been having the best of forms, and maybe teams around them have been doing slightly better than them. Yeah, that's about it, really. But to be honest, they're really, really close. I mean, they're like just 3 points behind Villa and Bournemouth, who are in 6th and 7th. So again, that's what I meant by, how tight it is. It's just a point behind Newcastle, Brentford, Tottenham, who are just 3 spots above them. So it's pretty tight, I guess. How has Amarin done? I think okay, reasonably okay. Not the end of the world, but again, still shows that how there's certain things that change about that club and how things have obviously, in my opinion, not changed too much exactly. But I've predicted, again, exactly another result here. 2-0 Arsenal there. Expected them to lose to Arsenal. Considering the form that Arsenal were going to come in, I think, yeah, I expected them to not just get a result, essentially. But the 4-0 win against Everton, great. That 3-2 loss to Nottingham just sounded to me like you're back to square again. But obviously, they've got on that Europa League win against Victoria Pilsen, if I'm not wrong. But yeah, the derby, we could talk about that and Man City, but from a Man United's perspective, a great result from them. To considering that game was just shambolic, in my opinion. I watched the full game and both teams were just playing without any sort of passion. And for Man United to snatch a win out of that, it shows two things. That one is that they're just the better of the two worst clubs right now. And yeah, City were just horrible, but we'll talk about that when we reach them. But yeah, to get that result over the line, great. How will they fare against Tottenham tonight? If you ask me to predict, I expect them to lose. But again, Tottenham aren't in great form either, so it's going to be tricky, isn't it, between these two? But in general, how do I think about Manchester United? Again, despite them being in this sort of form, I still don't think this is them. Like, this is clearly not the results they should be getting. It's a C from me. Again, you could argue it's harsh, right? They've got results over Everton, over, in Europe as well, and obviously Man City. But the game against Nottingham, I felt like it could be a little bit more competitive. I think a draw should have been expected at the bare minimum. A defeat is just not good enough. But the performances also, just to me, haven't been as convincing as what we expect out of Manchester United. So, yeah, I think it's still not the club that we are used to knowing, this team. So, a C it is from me, for Man United. Yeah, how they can perform tonight, I really don't know. I think they're going to lose again. So, yeah, that's it really for Manchester United. I think Amorim is doing an okay job. Sometimes he needs the players to turn up, and they do turn up. But when they don't, that's exactly when results don't go their way. So it's still a bit wobbly. Still a lot of things changing that club. But yeah, I think thus far getting 6 points out of possible 12 isn't the worst, but isn't the best either. So pretty good for Man United, I guess, in some aspects. But yeah, we'll move on to the next team. And here we are with the final team for this first part. It's Brentford. They started 11th. They've also finished 11th after 4 game weeks. Managed to get 6 points. Wins against Leicester and Newcastle, which is pretty good in my opinion. Like, to get the wins where I guess you expect them to, pretty good. I think I expected Newcastle to win. But yeah, Brentford did win and really come up top on that. So, come out on top. So, great from Brentford in that regard. Villa, despite a wobbly Villa, I still have belief in the Villa still able to do something. Villa were 3-0 up in that game. So, yeah, I think not good for Brentford. Against Chelsea, also would have expected a defeat there. But obviously Newcastle managed to get a little bit of revenge in the AFL Cup that just happened earlier. 2-1 win for them. But you can see Brentford have won all their home games and lost all their away games. I'm not exactly too sure if this has got to do with the home and away form kind of thing. But again, there's really just clear inconsistency that's coexisting within this club. Again, it's not really good. Brentford have been rather consistent in my opinion. It's just that Brentford have been pretty good. It's just that they have not been consistent when they've been in the Premier League during this period, the past 2 to 3 seasons. So I think arguably we can expect better from Brentford. It's just a matter of how they're going to try to do that. I think that's going to be that challenge for them. But yeah, otherwise, for me, it's a C. I think there's more to expect from this club. But that's my take on it. Maybe it's just me again putting a little bit too much hope in them. But yeah, we'll see what happens with Brentford over the next couple of weeks as well as the season progresses. But to me, there should be more out of this club. I think the manager is going to try to figure something out again. I just think this isn't their full potential. That's my take on it. But yeah, that will be the end for this first part. That's the bottom half done, really. We'll move on to the top half in the next video, and I'll see you guys over there. But thank you very much for watching this one. Drop a like if you guys have enjoyed. Of course, subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll see you in the next video. Until then, goodbye.